when I did a time lapse that time.
4 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Done. Nicely done. So there's a couple key promises or key pledges that Kennedy makes. I want to make sure that we're all aware of before we get started. Because it's this ideology that gets America into Vietnam, and it's this ideology that ensures that America can't get out of Vietnam. Christoph, you're excited? Talk to me. Just let's start with one. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Talk to me.
That we'll be loyal to our allies.
Good. Right? He promises this idea that we will stand by the people that stand by us. Right? In the context of the Cold War, that's important. That's important. Luis, what else?
He says that it will help people around the world under colonial control.
Yes, that we're going to help the people around the world that are under colonial control ensure they don't go into what type of government. He doesn't say communism, though. He says tyranny. Yeah, yeah. So that any of you colonial countries that are decolonizing, what do we refer to those countries as?
Third world.
Good. That these third world countries, that we're going to ensure that you grow your country up in a system of not tyranny. Good. Good. So yeah, you guys all identified that's a thinly veiled jab at communism, but he's not saying communism specifically. He's referencing it, he's just not saying it. Good. What else?
He also says that he'll be a foe of any nation that ensures that liberty will survive.
He's a foe of any
No,
nation?
not foe, but like an ally of any nation. He'll
Okay.
support.
Good. I'm going to come back to that line in a minute, because that's the big takeaway. What else is he promising, though? Slaney, talk to me, and then Brett.
Well, I said like emphasizing a lot on the need to help the poor, so I guess he's promising more of like helping the poor.
Yeah, right. There's a lot in here about taking all this prosperity of the 50s and trying to help the poor. Where? Poor where? Yeah, wherever, right? Not just home, but around the world as well. Cool, cool. Brett, talk to me.
I was going to say the economic assistance to end
Ec-
poverty.
Good. And economic assistance to end poverty. How about the last chunk? Who does he? The only time he actually references a specific region.
He promises to aid Latin America.
Good. Yeah. To help our sister republics south of the border, we offer a special pledge. Good. So he's promising a lot, is he not? It's a big promise. The line Luis points out, the third paragraph is the really famous line from this speech. Let every nation know, whoever you are, whether you wish us well or you wish us ill, that we will pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and success of liberty. We'll do it all. Whoever you are, if you like us, you like freedom, you like Republican-type governments, we got you. If you do not like our way of thinking, then we also got you, but in a different way. Now, we'll do everything we can to ensure the success of liberty in the whole world. Bold promise. Bold promise. And we'll talk a little bit about how this kind of gets us into trouble. So today we'll talk about the Vietnam War and, just as importantly, society's response. Huge turning point in American history, because this marks the beginning of the end. And when I say the beginning of the end of America's blind trust in their government. America's blind willingness to believe whatever the government tells them. We're going to go like scandal, 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 scandal for the next 10 years. And the public, us, we've never again regained our trust of the government. We've never again just believed what the government tells us. We're talking about right now in Trump's administration, we have all these investigative journalists who are exposing things in the government. Right? Up to this point, we have a lot of journalists that are exposing things, right? Like the muckrakers, for example. But they're exposing things in the hopes that the government comes to solve problems. The big shift post-Vietnam is now the exposing of things as stuff that's happening in the government. Vietnam being one of them. Watergate being another one, which causes the president to actually resign. The Pentagon Papers we'll talk about on Wednesday. A vice president being indicted on bribery and fraud charges. So the next 20 years of American government is going to be just ugliness, which is one of the reasons why we end up with a Reagan-type character in the 80s. Okay? So your prompt is here, what are the effects, Mr. Strickland, of Vietnam on American culture, society, and politics? And your outline is here. It is I have a lot to get through. This is an ambitious task for the day. We'll probably only get to here, but it still is a lot. So buckle up. Put on your big boy or big girl pants. Your 36-30 pants. Or your 54-40 pants. Crystal Morris. And we'll be good to go. So we'll talk about Kennedy's foreign policy before Vietnam. We'll talk about the nation of Vietnam before U.S. involvement. We'll talk about kind of the why fight. And we'll talk about the different strategies to the war from both sides, or three sides. And then as we get to a more growing protest movement. So first, let's talk Kennedy. Obviously, he's not going to be around for very long. Have you noticed on your inaugural address I put JFK's first and then in parentheses only inaugural address? Sorry, Elio. May he rest in peace with Marilyn Monroe. Now, who does Kennedy come after? Who does he replace? Eisenhower, right? And Eisenhower has this policy of brinksmanship. That there are two ways to solve problems. What's way one?
All out negotiate.
Yeah, first is diplomacy. First we negotiate. If that doesn't work, we'll blow you off the face of the earth. Right? There's two options, right? Diplomacy or World War III. That's it. So Kennedy's approach, we'll title it, instead of brinksmanship, we'll title it flexible response. Flexible response. And that he doesn't think that we should have one or the other. It shouldn't just be all-out nuclear war or negotiation, but rather we should find some opportunities for middle grounds. As you guys should understand from last week, Eisenhower goes away from conventional military forces. He de-invests in the army, for example, and invests extra money just in bombs and planes. So under Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, one of those best and those brightest, these younger experts that Kennedy puts in his presidential cabinet, they try to go more so towards conventional military strategies, conventional military policies, and they want to kind of de-stress the world on atomic bombs. De-stress the world on atomic bombs. The nuclear weapon escalation should not be the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth resort. We should leave nuclear bombs for a final resort. Which is reasonable. Also under Kennedy, we see this investment in the idea that the Cold War is not just a military conflict. But the Cold War is a social conflict, the Cold War is a political conflict, and, incredibly importantly, the Cold War is an economic conflict. So, based on what you just read in your inaugural address, one of the first things Kennedy does in his presidency is create the Alliance for Progress, which does what he says he's going to do with Latin America. Right? Invest a bunch of money. I heard Cortez referencing dollar diplomacy, for example. It is a dollar diplomacy-esque approach to what's happening in Latin America, but using money, using finances to entice Latin America to be friendly with us. Places like Nicaragua, places like Guatemala, places like Mexico. Let's invest money in your country, and then, much like what the Marshall Plan does for Western Europe, use American dollars to build stability in Latin America. Because the last thing America wants is communist uprisings in our side of the world. What are some of the countries that have fallen to communism we've talked about? China, who else?
Korea.
Yeah, North Korea, North Vietnam. What else? Not yet.
Cuba.
East Germany. Yeah, where are all those countries though? Yeah, I would argue that Korea is not in fact in Europe. But they're all far. Yeah, they're all in Eurasia, if you will. But they're all far away from home. So this Alliance for Progress is an important thing to note as America tries to build on the economic developments of the Cold War. Also noted and noteworthy, it's good to have just a piece of SFI for us, is the creation of the Peace Corps, which still exists today. It takes young people, sends them on humanitarian. I couldn't think of that word for spirit, it just came back to me. So if they ever watch the video, they will. Roger will. Now he loves witch videos, that's all. Humanitarian visits to other countries places like Africa, places like Latin America, places like the Middle East, places like Southeast Asia, on humanitarian missions. To try to spread America what? If we're going on humanitarian missions, what? Sure, kind of. American goodwill. Right? That if the only Americans you see in your small village, wherever it is, are coming to help you dig a well or build a school. Yeah, it builds up credit, so to speak, in other countries. So the Alliance for Progress and the Peace Corps are important because they reference that whole new frontier that Kennedy is pushing on the domestic front of making the world a better place. Making the world a better place. So it's not just militarily, but economically and ideologically that Kennedy's trying to spread America ideas, like you said, but also spread American goodwill and get America on the right side of people. Of course, under him as well, this idea of flexible response, this is what gets us into the Vietnam War in the first place. But we'll talk some more about what that looks like in a minute. Leave Vietnam for now. The first couple of things that take place under Kennedy's presidency, though, are huge L's. It's not good. It's not good. Now, the first thing really the first foreign policy thing that takes place under Kennedy's presidency is the Bay of Pigs. Who knows what the Bay of Pigs is? It's a huge-ass disaster. Well, here's my map. Here's Cuba. I made a little dot here for you guys on the wall. I'll paint it later. Here's Cuba. What's unique about Cuba in this communist story?
It's really close.
It's not just really close. It's like really, really, really close. Like Cuban refugees have come to America on rafts. Which sounds crazy, but that just goes to show you how close it is, right? Nobody takes a raft from here to Europe. Nobody takes a raft from here to Hawaii. The fact that a refugee from Cuba can get on a raft and float to Florida means Cuba's pretty freaking close. Now, Cuba, of course, falls to communism, is at the time run by Fidel Castro. I mentioned under Eisenhower's presidency these attempts by the CIA to assassinate him, unsuccessfully. But the Bay of Pigs is really the first public opinion embarrassment disaster that happens for America in the Cold War. Yeah, we were embarrassed by the Soviets beating us to space with Sputnik. Yeah, we were embarrassed by the Soviets very rapidly detonating their first atomic bomb. But this really plays out in the entire global media, and it's all sorts of bad. Now, what happens is there's a bunch of people who have fled Cuba. They've left Cuba. It's a long story. I can get more into it later if you guys want. But the CIA, who is obviously a brand new organization, trains these refugees and sends them back to Cuba to start a revolution and overthrow Fidel Castro. Except it goes terribly wrong, right? As soon as they get stuck in this harbor when they're supposed to go and invade, Fidel Castro knows they're coming. He sends the army there. They're getting killed at a large rate. They ask the U.S. for help. The U.S. is like, yeah, sorry, we can't be associated with you, even though everybody knows it's the U.S. that does it. It turns into a huge public relations nightmare and a disaster. It makes the U.S. look really bad. The U.S. does not back these rebels that they sent there to go do this. It's a hot mess. It's a hot mess. So the invasion fails. The rebels are almost all killed or put in prison, and it makes Kennedy look really, really weak. Not a good start. Right after this, the Berlin crisis begins. Now, where is Berlin? We've already talked about this in class. It's capital of Germany, but where is it? It's in East Germany. It's in East Germany. So who controls the area around? Soviet, yeah. So what's happening in Berlin, though, is all these skilled laborers, all these people who want to do well for themselves, are leaving East Berlin and moving to West Berlin. Why? Why would they leave East Berlin and go to West Berlin?
Capitalism.
Because there's food, right? Because there's opportunity, because it's a more Western version. Yeah, absolutely. And in East Berlin, what type of system are they living under? Communism. If you are a skilled laborer in a communist system, then what's the point? Think about it. Right? If everybody's equal, then what's the point of having skills that are marketable or transferable? So we're seeing a bunch of people leave East Berlin to West Berlin. Khrushchev, who is the premier of the Soviet Union at the time, is threatening to take over all of Berlin by military force. It gets quite tense. And the solution Khrushchev comes up with for the Berlin crisis is the Berlin Wall. And almost overnight, the Soviet forces in East Berlin construct a wall right in the middle of the city. People who have apartments and buildings that are right at the border wake up and have a wall at their window. Well, so much for that view. I had a nice view of East Berlin, and now I have bricks. Just bricks. And overnight, this wall is constructed, as you can see here, putting a clear, actual, physical dividing line between the Eastern world and the Western world. Now, we already talked about the Iron Curtain. Right? The Iron Curtain is there, but it's hypothetical. It's not a real curtain. But the Berlin Wall is real. It is a real dividing line between communist ideology and the capitalist ideology. Now, think about this in your own lives. Right? You guys have all seen walls. What are walls usually supposed to do? Protect you, right? You have a wall around your house. What's the wall around anything supposed to do? Keep people out. Keep intruders out. Keep enemies out. What is the Berlin Wall built to do? Keep people in. So overnight, we have these first two things that are happening under JFK's first year as president. Bay of Pigs, disaster. Berlin crisis, we have a wall now, not good. JFK visits Berlin in 1963, makes a very famous speech in which he appeals to the citizens of West Berlin, saying, "We'll never leave you." He says in German, "We are all Berliners." Very famous speech. But now we have two very important early events in which Kennedy comes out a little bit looking like he's soft. A little bit, especially after Eisenhower's brinksmanship, aggressive, push me the wrong way and I'll bomb you approach. And that's what gives us this Cuban situation. Now, question for you guys. Given what happened with the Bay of Pigs, if you were in Cuba, if you were Fidel Castro, for example, how would you feel about America? Think about it. Help me out here, guys. If you're Fidel Castro and Kennedy just authorized this attempted coup and invasion of your country, how would you feel about America?
Enemies.
Hostile, good. Not trustworthy, good. Hostile is a good word for it. Good. Yeah, anti-U.S. Now, if you're the Soviet Union, if you're Khrushchev, how would you feel about the fact that America tried to invade and overthrow your ally in the Western Hemisphere? Does anybody else want to speak today except the four people that are speaking? Threatened? Good. Tense? Sure. So what they do in Cuba instead is they begin building missile silos. There are 5 missile silos that are beginning to be constructed in Cuba with missiles pointed directly at the United States. Thoughts?
Scary.
Scary? Fear? Question for you guys. Is Cuba justified in doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say so. Sure. The U.S. finds out with, this is some photographs from the spy planes that were flying over Cuba all the time anyway. So there it is. The U.S. finds out very quickly that we see Soviet resources and the building of missile facilities in Cuba close to operational. They haven't just started. They are well down this path towards having atomic missiles that are, just a couple miles here from Florida. As you can see with this circle, if you can't see it, I'll outline it for you. This is the range of the missiles that are being built in Cuba in the Western Hemisphere. Half of Mexico is within range. A good 40% of the United States, Texas, the whole Deep South, Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York City, are all, if these missiles get done, are all in theory within range of an atomic bomb from Cuba. Here. It's not that important stuff. Throw it over your head and see if you can hit Brenda. Mm-hmm. Oh, well. He missed. He hit Christoph. Christoph died. I don't, no, you're just too far for you. You're going to hurt yourself. Throw it over your head and see if you can hit Ruby.
I don't want to do it.
Do it. You see my point? That is when the atomic weapons are in the Soviet Union trying to hit the United States. But that is when they're in Cuba. Hit Mexico, sure, that's what they're going to do. So the problem becomes the U.S. is stuck, Kennedy is stuck with a couple options. Talk to me. What are some of the options Kennedy is left with? What's option one?
Bombs.
Yeah. Option one, some of the more aggressive policy advisors of his are like, dude, just bomb the living crap out of Cuba. If we end Cuba, there's no Cuban Missile Crisis. So, but the first thought is like, oh my God, they're going to have missiles that are pointed right at the United States this close. The first thing we should do is just end them. Reasonable. The second option is diplomacy. Let's negotiate.